Prosperous Friday Nation Ahead series organized by Media Plus. Today we have Honorable Ambassador of the European Union Delegation to Nepal, Ms. Rensje Teerink, with us as our guest. Ms. Rensje Teerink is Ambassador of the European Union Delegation to Nepal, a known hand within the EU, or known Nepal hand within the EU. She came to Kathmandu in September 2013. Several weeks before Nepal elected a new Constituent Assembly to finish writing a new constitution addressing the aspirations of the people of world's youngest democratic republic. Since she came in 2013, a lot has happened in Nepal. Actually, it's been a very eventful time, and Ambassador Teerink has been through some of it. I think she was waiting at the Tribhuvan International Airport on April 25 when the earthquake struck Nepal, waiting for a flight to Burma. But on May 12th, she was in Kathmandu working with her colleagues in her office. And then in September, Nepal issued a new constitution, which only coincided with the blockade of the southern border points. All along, she's been closely watching developments in Nepal. She lives in Kathmandu and calls Kathmandu city her home, and knows her way around the city. She cycles around and she knows the city so very well. She knows where to shop, and she can also tell you where to buy green veggies, organic veggies on a Saturday morning. You might be surprised to know that she loves raiko saag. Yeah. No wonder she has a very nuanced understanding of developments happening in Nepal. She is one of us, although just about 2 years in Nepal. Welcome, Ambassador Teerink.
Thank you.
It's an honor to have you here in this 5th series of Prosperous Talks. As the program format is, we start today's interaction with a short documentary video presentation on the recent situation of Nepal.
A devastating earthquake struck central Nepal in April 2015, killing around 9,000 people and wounding 17,866. $489,549 houses were completely destroyed and 269,534 houses were partially damaged. Earthquake impact was not just immediate, but was also responsible in forcing many Nepalis to live in extremely difficult conditions. As an impact of the earthquake, the number of people living below the poverty line in Nepal increased by 400,000. Earthquake of April is still haunting many people and has an impact on daily life. To add woes to the difficulties, the unofficial embargo and extreme climate is worsening the standard of living for ordinary Nepalis. Nepal genuinely needs meaningful support for its reconstruction and rehabilitation, and mostly to bring life back to normal. The European Communities (ECC) and Nepal established diplomatic relationship in 1973. ECC joined the Nepal Aid Group in 1982. The European Union, including EU Delegation and the EU member states, is the biggest provider of development aid to Nepal. There has been a significant increase in assistance over the last 4 decades of EU-Nepal cooperation. After earthquake, European Commission has extended enormous support towards Nepal. As Nepal heads towards reconstruction phase and at this moment proposed assistance of 180 million euros from EU under state building contract may play vital role to mitigate the damages caused by the April earthquake. Similarly, other humanitarian aid and social aid projects should also be given special priority for the overall development of Nepal. But this is almost globally proven that aid alone is not enough for overall development of any nation. It is trade-related opportunity provided to the local people and income-generating options that are considered best tools to uplift the living standard of vulnerable people. Trade and investment are the core area where mutual cooperation is much needed. Aid for trade and capacity building projects for trade facilitation and market access assistance are the major areas where EU needs to increase its focus and assist so that Nepal can be benefited from the huge European market. Special and differential treatment for LDC given by EU is not enough, and projects related with enhancing supply side strength are the core areas which needs more support. Today we are gathered here to discuss on the new opportunities and the way forward on EU-Nepal relation. Warm welcome to all of you in Prosperous Friday Nation Ahead series.
Massive devastation caused by the earthquake and blockade of the borders, southern border points. After Nepal issued the constitution, European Union and I think all of Europe has consistently been stressing the fact that Nepal has to have a democratic and an inclusive constitution, which a section of Nepal thinks it's a democratic constitution, it's inclusive, but there is another section that thinks, well, it's not so. And they've resorted to blockade. I wonder if the blockade itself has affected the EU operations in Nepal or your responses to the earthquake when Nepal needs it the most.
Thank you very much, Prakashji, and thank you all for coming. First of all, let me express my appreciation to this nice film we saw. I think it touches on a lot of important parts of our EU-Nepal cooperation over the decades. So it's also for me nice to see a recap on this, very succinctly put, but very well done. So it's, I think, a good way to start to kick off this conversation. Now to come to your point on our operations and how they were affected by the blockade. As you know, the EU, we have a humanitarian office here in Nepal. We do not really carry out humanitarian operations ourselves. We do that through our development partners, be it UN institutions, be it big NGOs, also national NGOs. And of course our biggest support is going to go through the government of Nepal with our state building contract for reconstruction. Of course, I think, however, let me also point out that the blockade, of course, has impacted the humanitarian relief operations. I think we're seeing, hopefully, the light at the end of the tunnel now. But it should be pointed out that we were very concerned about this crisis evolving really into a major humanitarian crisis, which is not really what Nepal needs after already this very difficult year it has seen since the 2 earthquake, and then not even mentioning all the aftershocks. So yes, we were very concerned. I think EU has also been one of the first development partners of Nepal to have actually spoken out on this. We issued a statement voicing our concerns about the possible emerging of a humanitarian crisis on the 6th of October, I think before anyone else did. Then also the European Parliament has spoken out quite forcefully on this, also on, I think, on the 25th of October. The major issue, I think, was keeping the humanitarian operations going was, I mean, there are manifold, many, let's say, issues at stake. For example, one obvious point is to guarantee aviation fuel. That has been challenged. Of course, the fact that humanitarian supplies themselves were stuck at the border is of course, was a big issue. And it's still, if I'm correct, the latest briefing from the UN has informed us that there's still some packages, some blankets, some solar power equipment that is not yet free to come into Nepal. So these are very obvious issues. For ourselves, as also a diplomatic mission and office here in Kathmandu, we have managed to continue our operations. We are a very small office. We only have about 35 people. We have a generator to run, so it's not a major problem for us. But what really concerned the EU delegation and myself here in Nepal was how to reach out to the most vulnerable and how to keep these relief operations that are so badly needed, how to keep them going under these circumstances.
Essentially, because this blockade has directly to do with the constitution that we have, if I may ask you, has the European Union read the full text of the constitution? Maybe we know what to take about the complete content of the address the EU concerns all along?
Well, I think we've said it very clearly. When the constitution was promulgated, we joined ourselves with most development partners here in Nepal of actually welcoming the constitution. I must honestly admit that I haven't read it for the constitution from front to cover, but of course I'm familiar with the main clauses. And for us, we feel that this is a major milestone for Nepal. It's a historic opportunity which we always encourage Nepal to make headway with and to promulgate it. We are especially happy on let's say, the clauses on inclusion, on gender, on participation, on rule of law. I mean, I think this is a milestone. So for us, it is a very promising development. Now, to say, is it a perfect constitution? Well, that begs the question: which constitution is perfect? I mean, that is why there is there possibility to amend. Maybe to cite one example where we think the constitution could have been more inclusive is reaching out to women and citizenship. I think it's probably not fair that a Nepali woman, her children cannot be Nepali citizens by birth if she's married to a foreigner. Also single mothers, it's of course a problem. If they cannot prove who the father is, will these children be stateless? I think so. There is room for improvement. I think also on the reaching out to the groups that are not very happy with how they have been included in the constitution with regard to proportional representation and the delineation of the provinces. I mean, they're also this is a very complex issue, but this can also be addressed through other mechanisms, and I think, if I'm correct, this is what is going to hopefully happen in the coming weeks to find a solution to this also. But as a document that Nepal has put forward, I think the EU has firmly welcomed it, and we still stand by this welcome.
Yeah, maybe the EU should engage with the actors and use its soft power to convince them that not everything is achievable. But then, things can be achieved in due course of time. Maybe, I don't know if you would be best placed to do that.
Well, I think there has to first of all be an appetite here in the country itself for, let's say, mediation or involvement from other parties. And so far, I don't think that is the case. And I also, I think it's not our role here to really become engaged in this process. This is something that Nepal needs to solve on its own. We always said we do not want to influence the constitution. The constitution is something that Nepal will promulgate according to its own wishes, whether it's going to be a secular republic or whether it's going to be a monarchy or a Hindu state. Or this is all for the people of Nepal to decide upon. What we are happy is to see that many principles and values which are important for the EU are actually laid down in this constitution. For example, we all know that Nepal in 1994 already abolished the death penalty, but this is also taken on in the constitution. I think it's rather a forerunner in South Asia in this from this perspective. And look at the position of LGBT groups. I think it's very progressive. So we're happy to see these very progressive clauses in the Constitution. That doesn't mean that we feel we have a right to impose or influence what the people of Nepal want.
Yeah, we agree. I mean, the Constitution, of course, has some shortcomings, but then we hope the political leadership of the day will have some common sense and they'll address it in due course of time. Moving away from the issue of constitution, like the video also stressed that Nepal this time needs more assistance, more aid, more support from the European Union as Nepal tries to come out of the shock and try to rebuild after earthquake. What has been the EU's priority? EU has been supporting in areas of governance, education, sustainable development, things like that. But then the immediate need is to help Nepal come out and rebuild. What's been the focus of the EU?
Maybe I should put this in a larger context of the EU Global Development Agenda. A couple of years ago, we issued the Agenda for Change, where we took on board some of the principles of the Paris Declaration and the Busan Conference, in which we feel that development cooperation should go to the most needy countries. So therefore, Nepal is of course one of the LDCs, moreover a landlocked development, least developed country. So it was only logical that we, in fact, from 2014, stepped up our cooperation with Nepal. In fact, our portfolio for Nepal tripled. And this was before the earthquake. When the earthquake happened, of course, it really forced us to look at the main priorities. And at the time of the Donors Conference on the 25th of June, we had the pleasure of receiving our development commissioner here, and he made an immediate commitment of 100 million euros budget support to the government of Nepal to create fiscal space to start with the most needy, let's say, relief operations and reconstruction. So this was actually not us giving a priority to on how the money is going to be used. Rather, we said here is 100 million euros. It goes straight into the government's coffers. It's going to be, of course, used for the reconstruction, but the ins and outs, it's up to the government of Nepal to decide. But it will create fiscal space, and it will create and help you to immediately start. Now, of course, we're all a bit disappointed that after the conference, developments didn't pick up as quickly as we would have hoped. Now we've seen that finally the Reconstruction Authority has been established, the bill has been voted, we have a full-fledged authority in place, and so we're very hopeful now that we can start and that this money will be used. Because let's also be clear, while of course Nepal is one of the countries that is, due to its position, landlocked, least developed country, merits our support. the EU budget is under a lot of stress currently, because in our own neighborhood there are so many important challenges. If we look at the Middle East, we look at Syria, we look at Libya, we look at the unprecedented influx of migrants, which is on a scale that we have hitherto never really, we could imagine that this would happen. It also puts a big drain on the budget. So if we want to argue that Nepal should remain an important development recipient, an important recipient of EU aid, we should also be able to show that yes, the money is well spent, yes, the money can be absorbed. And so far it's not always that easy to convince our people in Brussels that this has been the case.
So, yeah, you briefly talk about the refugee crisis, because last year itself, more than $1 billion cost into the European borders, and Germany placed to absorb huge number of about 1/3. Would that put EU member states under pressure that they have to also show some kind of gesture so they are more welcoming to the migrants? If they do that, how would that put pressure on the member states individually and the EU as a bloc? Is there a risk of funds being committed to Nepal, being diverted away from Nepal to address more serious concerns in the neighborhood back in Europe?
That's a good question. Let me explain that the way the EU is functioning, we have 7-year budgets, and so on the chapter for external relations and development assistance, we had committed 360 million for Nepal, and that will not be touched. Now, with the earthquake, we all know that Nepal will need more resources, and the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister very clearly also said it in his briefing 2 days ago, that yes, we will need more support. Now, will we be able to get this support and give additional funds? That will be the important question to ask, and that is not it's not self-evident, because we will need to look at it from a global perspective, see how much money is now being diverted to dealing with the refugee crisis. The Valletta summit has already resulted in a 1.8 billion package for North Africa and Somalia and other African countries to help them also deal with the crisis. We have, of course, other instruments. We have the instrument for migration has received more money. And what is maybe interesting to know also, that Nepal has been also a beneficiary of this instrument for migration. So we've been using migration funds also to help Nepal. How? By basically working together with the ILO and with the International Organization for Migration here in Nepal to set up projects, for example, to make migration more safe for Nepali migrants, and to look especially at the recruitment agencies. So this is just to say that apart from our bilateral portfolio, we have a lot of other instruments which we use and which will be used in Nepal. For example, also under our regional cooperation, we have a civil aviation program for SARC, which will also benefit Nepal. It will have a positive impact, we hope, on Nepal's civil aviation sector, which is badly needed. We have a non-state actor budget for NGOs. We have a budget line for human rights. So apart from these 360 million bilateral portfolio, which mainly goes through the government, we have many other instruments. So there we also have hope that Nepal will continue to be a recipient and to get access to these funds.
Yeah, but then the spending capacity of the government looks to be a serious concern to the EU.
Yeah, that is, I mean, and it's not only a concern on part of the EU, but I think on behalf of the entire donor community, to see that capital expenditure on the development budget has been rather disappointing. So I think there should be serious headway be made by this government to actually show that money will be spent, that it reaches the people, and that it reaches it in a way that is also accountable and transparent. We are very happy to work with the government. I think the EU was one of the first partners that actually channeled money through budget support, sector budget support in the education sector. back in the late 90s, the Nepal Basic Education Program. So this has been our philosophy all around, but it should also be accompanied by a reform agenda and by the necessary accountability and transparency. So that is, I think, something we will have to really look at.
Excellency, the European airspace has been banned for Nepali airlines since December 2013. So I hope it has nothing to do with you coming here. And the official position of the European Union has been that it's not too happy with the Civil Aviation Authority of Nepal's ability to, ensure or implement international safety standards of flights. What has there been a change, in the last 2 years? Have they responded to your calls or maybe suggestions?
Let me maybe clarify that it's not the EU as such who that actually address this. We usually act on ICAO, and ICAO, when they did a mission back in 2013, they found a number of significant safety concerns. For Nepal, and back in 2009, I think of the global average of safety concerns addressed or of necessary actions, safety actions to be put in place is about 61%. In Nepal it was 43%. So there was a big gap and a lot needed to be done. Then this was also followed by a number of fatal airplane crashes. A number of Europeans were also killed in this. And so this prompted the European Commission to add Nepal on the safety list. It doesn't mean that all Nepal carriers are dangerous or shouldn't be able to fly. What it means is that the regulatory oversight, and in this case the Civil Authority, Aviation Authority of Nepal, should address these issues and put in place the regulatory oversight to make the entire system in Nepal airworthy. So it's actually the good airlines in Nepal bearing the brunt of the fact that the Civil Aviation Authority is not able yet to address some of these concerns. Now we have hopes also that here we will see a major improvement. I think the next mission from the European Commission and the EASA and ICAO is in the cards. It should be still this semester. And we have good hopes that if also with the help of the project we are funding, which is a 7 million project on civil aviation, that Nepal will reap the benefits and that these safety concerns will be addressed and will be put onto an acceptable level, which would mean that by hopefully December this year, Nepal can be put off the safety list.
So the dates of the new upcoming mission have been finalized?
Not yet finalized to my knowledge, but it should be rather soon. Let me also tell you that, in my opinion, it has not really had such a bad consequence on, for example, European tourists coming. Because being on the safety list doesn't preclude European travelers from traveling in Nepal with Nepal Airlines or other carriers. It is just a warning to say that there is a problem, but I mean they're completely free to travel. There can be sometimes an issue of insurance, but in our knowledge, I mean it hasn't really led to a dwindling number of European passengers. It's rather the earthquake that has really hit tourism hard. And I think another confidence booster was of course that, for example, Nepal Airlines has invested now in modernizing its fleet. The fact that now they have Airbuses, modern, safe and fuel-efficient planes should also help. And so, yes, we are confident that if the political will is there to address these safety concerns and to make serious headway, that hopefully by the end of the year we can go back to normal and have Nepal off the list.
Yeah. The European Union mission has been here for long. It's been here for decades. And there are efforts, to promote bilateral trade, trade between EU member states individually and trade economic relationship between Nepal and Europe has not been very, both the countries have not really benefited a lot, although there are potential, or we presume there are potentials. The European investment doesn't seem to be coming much, and we had even Ansel, they just sold out and packed up their bags. Is your office or the European Union in a position to, motivate, encourage potential European investors individually or as a group? I know there is European Investment Bank trying to invest in Tanova hydroelectricity project, but then besides that there is no huge big-scale investment from the European side. As a result, the economic relation is not very vibrant. Is there anything your office is thinking?
Yes and no. I think we're, of course, punching below our weight. I think there would be an opportunity for much more trade going on between the EU and Nepal. Nevertheless, if we look at it, I think we are Nepal's second export market, and we are the third largest trading partner after India and China. I also see an increase in, for example, activity here in Nepal by the setting up of chambers of commerce. I think our big member states here all have chambers of commerce, but even those who are not represented directly, like Italy, I think last year they set up an Italian Nepal chamber of commerce. So there is a lot. Things are moving, but it needs more. For example, we have an EU Nepal chamber of commerce. So things are definitely moving. We are also helping Nepal with the trade agenda. We had a project which is now finalized that helped Nepal with its membership of the WTO. We now have a 6 million project that has just started to help on the coffee chain. We see here a very important niche market for Nepal. Himalayan coffee could become an important niche market in Europe, where people are more and more looking towards organic products. Now Himalayan coffee, I think, is something that really can be boosted. So this is a 6 million project which we are doing through the Ministry of Commerce, and we have good hopes that that will generate a lot of help for especially small farmers in Nepal. And I think we will be again looking at another 6 million or 7 million project for Nepal, again trade related. Also, Nepal being an LDC is of course eligible to several very advantageous trade regimes. For example, our generalized system of preferences and everything but arms. So it means that Nepal can export to the EU without quota or any duties, customs duties imposed. And so that is one of the advantages as well. Now, on the other hand, what needs to be tackled is an enabling environment here to attract overseas investment and ODI. And there we see there are still many hurdles. Again, we have helped Nepal with a project to, for example, a one-stop shop helping potential investors to see on an internet website of the Ministry of Commerce to help them guide how to actually access the Nepali market. So that is one thing we sponsored as well through FNCI. However, the big investments will only come when those firms are convinced that there is an enabling environment, that they take their investments, their dividends back. And there you mentioned yourself Ansel. It was very promising. Ansel, I think, has 60% is in the hands of Telia Sonera, which is a Danish-Finnish company. Now they've decided to pull the plug on most of their Asian and Central Asian endeavors, and that it's not only that's not related to Nepal as such. It's just a general management decision. But I think what has not helped is that Article 33 of the Nepal's telecom guidelines specify that after the lease is over, and in the case of Ansel this would be in, I think, 2029, assets would have to be handed over to Nepal government. Now, this is a problem. Why? Because it's first of all not really it's not in conformity of the WTO provisions, and it will of course not help in attracting more investors. So the fact also that the dividends, because Ansell, I mean, it's been a very profitable company. I think I myself use Ansell. I guess I would bet on it that most of the people here in this room all have Ansell chips in their cell phones. But if an investor cannot get the dividends back and the money is sitting here, it's also not conducive to expanding big investments here in the country. So I think that is an important message, that the enabling environment should really be addressed, and to really attract the big money. Now, you also mentioned the European Investment Bank. Yes, we have now 3 big contracts signed, but let me also clarify that the European Investment Bank is the kind of the European version of the World Bank. So it gives soft loans for development projects. So in the sense, it invested in the hydropower sector because it's relevant to Nepal as a developing country to get these sectors off the ground. And not only hydropower as such, but also transmission lines. So we have now 3 projects on the anvil, which are signed, almost 200 million euro soft loans. So it's quite substantive. But there also we hope that we will see the fruits, that these projects will take off. And it's unfortunate to say again that last week we heard that a Norwegian company is actually also pulling out because they they face a lot of problems. I'm not saying that that is the case with our project, but it's not easy. The whole environment to do business here is not easy, so that should also be tackled very recently.
So is it just the policy hurdles, or there are a lot of other non-policy issues that also need to be addressed if we are to bring in more investment or to retain the investors already in Nepal?
I think the policy issue here is crucial, and it needs, let's say, a fresh look. I think the private sector should be much more involved. I think many do what they can. They're also facing, of course, a lot of challenges. But the policy environment, I think, is ultimately crucial, because if it's actually government policy to take assets back and not to allow dividends to be taken out of the country, then how are you going to convince other partners to come in?
Yeah, talking about export potentials, I think in one of the interviews that I read, you say that when you go back home, you take Nepali coffee. So could coffee itself, coffee itself, could be the starting point, for increasing our export to Europe?
Yes, that is, I think, why we decided in our trade project to focus on coffee, because we feel there is it will never be huge in terms of European markets, but we're talking here about niche markets, which on the other hand, for Nepal can be very important, especially smallholders, poor landholders, who can see coffee as a very profitable crop. And that is why we feel that these kind of niche markets are important, and we should build on the European trend to look at organic, to look at special issues, like a cup of Himalayan coffee is of course more interesting than opening a Nescafe filter.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I think the stocks of the debate is we also have the floor open for if there are questions to be asked apart from what I have had covered. So maybe we can open the floor for questions if there are any.
That you had just given us. The only one question that I would like to put on you is regarding I know that in Nepal there are lots of hurdles that you have to go through it, especially FDI that we are talking about. In that one, yes, there are lots of problems. But recently, the Norwegian company who just decided to move back from here, one of the main issue is regarding the PPA with other countries. But last year when we had a SAARC summit in Nepal, SAARC had agreed to have a cross-country transmission line also, and they're working in that one. And since the cross-country transmission is going to take place, that means that the hydro or the power, that energy you wanted to sell, you can sell anywhere around this area. So it's not only the Nepal government that you have to depend on it. So what do you think of this one? Another is that I used to tell the authorities, Nepalese authorities also, is that we always talk about 80,000, 100,000, 120,000, or somebody even had said 150,000 megawatt. No? And I used to tell them that if we don't work in this one now, or if within this few years period, then it will be a fairy tale story, no? Because all the new technologies are coming day by day. So being ambassador from European Union, I would like to request you to see if you can also put the word or put some pressure both to Nepal government as well as the European investors. We will do it from our side, but from your side also, if you can convince them and tell them about this new development, then definitely there will be lots of opportunity. This is one part. Another is that, yes, the ICAO that you had mentioned about being blacklisted Nepalese air traffic, that is there. See, ma'am, what happened is that simple travel advisory would destroy whole travel market in Nepal. This you must have experienced earlier also. We were being kept as a dangerous zone during the Maoist insurgency, whereas we never had any problem. Which European Union in another time you had agreed in those part also. So similarly, this blacklisted being Nepal Air, that had already damaged, and that will. So we would like to request, as a private sector, I would like to request you to consider it. And as I said earlier also, from Nepal government side, it's always slow process that they are doing. But from your side, we would like to request you to see if you can do something and put us some consideration in these issues. Thank you.
Yeah, we need more.
Thank you for also raising SAARC, because Nepal is now currently holding the chair, not only of SAARC but also BIMSTEC, and is looking now also at becoming a dialogue partner of the SCO. It's not yet part of ASEM, the Asia-Europe meeting, but we hope to see that come to fruition also, hopefully in the near future. So regional cooperation is, we feel, extremely important, and the European Union being, let's say, a successful regional project, if we really look at what the EU stands for, its regionalism, its regional cooperation, we feel that this is one thing where we need to give more impetus, and but it's of course not so easy because SAARC, although there are many similarities with the European Union, there are also many differences. But the fact of sub-regional cooperation and SASEC, for example, just for your information, the second big loan, soft loan that the European Investment Bank is giving, is actually going to SASEC for transmission lines. So this will have a regional implication, as you also rightly pointed out. The fact that facilitating sub-regional cooperation, Nepal will stand to gain enormously, but not only Nepal, but the other, for example, the BBIN. We hope to see that, I mean, wherever SAARC cannot manage to reach its goals, that at least the BBIN, Bhutan, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, we see good potential there. So I think in terms of regional cooperation, we will certainly look at how we can also support this kind of development, which we think is very important. Yes, the travel advisory. You're right to say that it's very annoying that countries try to protect their citizens, but it's actually what it boils down to. And of course, it's not something that we as EU have any say on. This is the individual member states. And if you go on the 28 different websites, you will see 28 different types of travel advice. Whether it's member state number one saying that, well, Nepal knows, no big issue. Another will say, be careful, and still the ground is unstable after the earthquake. And others will refer to the flight ban. That is the way. There's not much we can do. The only thing what we can do as a European Union is to be proactive in helping Nepal to overcome it. And that's what we're doing through our civil aviation program in the regional context. So hopefully this regional South Asia regional aviation program of 7 million euros will help Nepal also to address the safety concerns. So we're there positively, and also we're ready. My colleagues also from EASA have come here. There's technical assistance going on. So it's not that we're not trying to help Nepal to overcome these issues. I mean, on the other hand, if a European citizen wants to travel to Nepal, he or she should be made aware of, let's say, the dangers, and I think that's also a government's duty to do that. So yes, it's annoying. Sometimes it's not really to the point. There can be things where you say, well, why should they say that? It's not really relevant for Nepal. Some issues are more relevant, and so, but yeah, it's 28 different countries all giving different advice, but there are some issues, I think, which merits to be on there.
Thank you.
Can you please identify yourself?
Participating in many organizations, or there are many organizations which are running in different sectors of Nepal. But you just said that from 1970, I mean, UN has been participating in Nepal with different organizations, and they give fund. Here also a lot of organizations are there which are run from the European Union funds, and government also collect a lot of funds from European Union. But I representing a Nepali youth. If you give such fund to really who are infected, for example, a massive earthquake has gone, and if you go to the grassroots level, if you find what might be problem, and you also be an example of it. From many years you are being here, and you know the problem, and you, as being a member of a society or a culture, particularly to that place, if you want to find problems there and the fund which are being collected from your side, if you want to spend the money in that side, particular side, then it might be so fruitful for that particular area. I will say this.
Are there areas that the government needs to improve to be able to absorb more aid and to utilize the aid that we already have effectively?
Well, we're representing youth speaking out today because we feel that that's the hope of this country. I mean, if you see the role that young people have played, first and foremost, what comes to mind is after the earthquake. If it wasn't for young volunteers who have done a tremendous job helping the army and the police in the first relief phase and early recovery, that is something tremendously impressive. So it's in fact it's a demographic dividend. Nepal's young population is really a boon. The big challenge, of course, is how to give employment, how to keep the people here. If you see, again, we're touching upon the problem of migration, many disillusioned young people leaving the country, finding better opportunities elsewhere. So this, of course, is something that the government must look at, and that we also are interested in through our programs, which across the board should mainstream this problem and address it as well, whether it's one of our biggest priorities here is education, quality education. So we've been for many years supporting the school sector reform program. It's now looking more also into higher education. We also have the Erasmus Mundus program, by which we give scholarships to do EU masters in Europe and we have seen many brilliant Nepali students making use of that. So I think what you point out is extremely relevant. The young people, the voice of the young people who maybe are not so much heard, for example, in the political sphere. There I find where are the young people here for example, represented with the political parties? It's still very much dominated by the older generation, and while on the one hand, of course, it's nice to bring that into the cultural context of respect for elderly people, which in Europe again is very much lacking. Let me also point that out. But I think the voice of young people maybe should be heard more. And it's for us also a big challenge. What can we do about it, except apart from helping the government with a good education system and helping to create employment opportunities so that people will not leave the country, because that's a terrible loss of capital, human capital, leaving and you know.
Yeah. Political process. The political leadership at the top there is very crowded. These guys, the senior citizens, have been there for long, and there is no way within party systems to phase them out. So that's going to be a real challenge for Nepali, political parties, youth leaders, youth activists, to bring about changes up there. And that's the challenge.
For federalism in Nepal, since EU is going to converge all this aspect to one currency, one region, and even there is the integration part also. But there is a strong advocacy for federalism in Nepal. Is there anything that policy? What is the hidden policy for that? So much.
If I may try to put it in the context, the issue of federalism has been a very divisive issue in Nepal. If we are to have a referendum now, let's say on Nepal becoming a secular state and Nepal opting to become a federal state, I think an overwhelming majority will vote against, except the political leaders. So, the political leaders, they couldn't stand the pressure. They couldn't, not do anything about it, and they quickly rushed to, agree federalism, and even secularism. So these are two divisive issues. Monarchy, fine. We are done with it. We don't really. I think people don't really care about monarchy, but there's a very issues close to their heart. So when he says, why EU is so committed to push and promote federalism in Nepal?
Well, I think it's a misunderstanding, because as I said earlier, whether Nepal will be federal or whether it will not be federal, I think both systems have pros and cons. And we are not pushing for one thing or another. I said, it's up to the people of Nepal to decide. And I can see the problems with federalism, and we've been also, for example, questioning, it's all very nice to have all these different states, but who will foot the bill? This is going to be a costly exercise. So is it the recipe for all Nepal's problems? I don't think so. But what the EU stands for is regional cooperation. If you see, how did the EU come into being? It was after the war, but in fact a mechanism to put two arch enemies, France and Germany, who had lost so much in 2 world wars, to get them together and actually build confidence by uniting it at first only their coal and steel industries. Why coal and steel? You can make arms, so by making a supranational mechanism that actually looks at the coal and steel sector, you're not both sides would not be able to, go on a defense spree threatening the other. So that was how the European Union was formed in the very beginning. Now, is it federal? Not at all, because it's not that the member states of the European Union all want to give up their nationalities and become one under an EU umbrella. So in fact, the way the EU has evolved is that whatever is not decided at the country level will be decided at the EU level. But whatever the countries themselves, the individual member states, can do better will remain at the national level. So, I mean, it's not that the EU is a federal system in this sense, and it's also not something that we are actually propagating as a model for Nepal at all. I think there are more, it's actually quite a complex issue, and how to really make the best of it will need to be seen. I think what is more important, and what we, and that I can say clearly, what we've pushed from the beginning is local governance. I think it's rather a pity that this country hasn't seen local elections for so long, because there you see there is a vacuum of power, and I think local governance is where it is important for Nepal. So we've always pushed not only for the second constituent assembly elections, which we observed, and even the first constituent elections, but local elections is what we're looking at. So this is a different issue, I think, than just saying, no, Nepal should be a federal republic. I mean, it's not up to us to decide. If Nepal decides this is a republic, federal republic, fine. But another thing is coming to us and saying, now, could you help out with the money to create these federal states? Well, this is going to be a costly exercise. I don't think we even have a budget for that. What we can do is look at local governance and help from the grassroots. I think that is what is important for Nepal. Against religion, it just goes to say that all religions should be equal, and that every religion is protected by the state, but that, for example, a state apparatus or a government should be secular in its outlook without, damaging religious minorities. I think that is the way what the EU stands for, not to impose other religions or trying to convert people. I mean, if you see in Europe, I think Europe has become more and more secular over the years. You see this, what earlier used to be identified very much with Christianity or Catholicism is now, has been replaced by secular values. Also because Europe is more diverse. We have the same motto as India: unity and diversity. And so we accommodate all religious minorities, and they should all be able to live and have the same rights.
Rensje, I am Arun Kumar Suredi, writer and entrepreneur. Before posing question, I have two conclusions in my studies for a long time. In Nepal, from British India, from British, USA, France, now EU. You have a consistent policy in Nepal, and you are in new form. You are supporting several INGO and NGOs in Nepal, and they are working in the ground level. Now, what is the result up to now? It's clear for all Nepalese people. Most of the ethnic community in Nepal, which has been conserved by our previous regime, now losing their identity because of conversion and baptization. It is so rampant in Nepalese rural level. You can see even there is no one temple or gompa, and you can see even 5, 6, 7 churches over there. See, this is not question of conversion only. This conversion is challenging the internal security of our immediate neighbors. Our immediate neighbors have put their concern several times. Even China's Deputy Defense Minister just visited before, and even Indian ministers. So this is the one thing I would like to request European Union to protect the sanctity and dignity of Jesus please stop conversion and stop to eliminate the identity of our ethnic communities, which are big treasure. Thank you.
The EU has been accused of many things. Let's go back a little bit. During the Maoist conflict, we've always tried to help the country to find a solution to the problem by trying to get all parties back to the mainstream. And many times it was said at that time, and how do I know that? Because I was Nepal desk in Brussels, and I was traveling once or twice a year to Nepal. So, and my predecessors, they were many times, accused of, the EU is pushing the Maoist agenda. You're helping in creating this Jana Jati identification. People earlier were happy to be Nepalis. Now there is a kind of realization that they're from, oppressed minorities, Jana Jatis, Dalits. So you're pushing that agenda. We only said no. I mean, if this is a problem in Nepal, it's also it's a social problem related to poverty. So it needs to be addressed in a sense of creating, addressing these issues and helping and also de-radicalize. For example, the Maoists, and try to bring them into the mainstream. And this is actually what has been done and has led to the peace process, which is generally recognized as a successful model, unique in its way, from which many countries can learn. So that's just one of the backgrounds and one of the roles that was attributed to the EU. Now we see a different. Now suddenly we are not happy anymore to push to help the Maoists. Now we want everybody to like Jesus. I mean, I'm sorry. Yes, we have a lot of NGO partners. Most of these NGO partners are secular or other or even Hindu organizations. They're reaching out to the most difficult to reach people, the poorest people, and they're actually delivering important results in terms of poverty reduction. For example, one of our long-standing NGO partners is Mighty Nepal, which is being led by internationally acclaimed CNN hero Anuradha Koirala. She is rescuing many girls from trafficking. This is one of our NGO partners. We have another, for example, in Butwal, very interesting organization called Seto Guranj, who's doing excellent work on, small preschool children, etc. So yes, there may have been one or two organizations that also, look from a more Christian perspective, but there I'm more looking at the overall EU organizations, for example, like Caritas, or there are even some Dutch NGOs like ICO who do a lot. But the funny thing is that although these kind of organizations were Christian to begin with, have become also secularized, so there is not this inherent, they wouldn't go out and convert people. Now, another thing is what you are saying is that there is perhaps a lot of conversion going on. I don't know who is converting. What we're hearing is that it's a lot to do with South Korean evangelist groups coming in. I mean, I'm sorry, they're South Korean, they're not European. Others are American. I'm sorry, evangelist groups, they come in, I'm not, I have a problem with that as well. I think anybody saying that we will help you, but first you will take our Bible, and it's objectionable. I mean, that's not what the EU stands for. That's not what we're doing. And you can be, you're happy to. I would like to invite you to our delegation, and we can talk more about the projects we're doing and the NGO partners we're. Why are so many poor families actually embracing these evangelist groups? Because they feel that they're getting something they're not getting from the government, or not even from other religious organizations, be they Hindu or Muslim or Buddhist. Maybe that is where you need to look. What are we doing wrong that these evangelists have so much appeal in Nepal? I think that is a question. That's not our problem. I mean, if Nepal becomes totally Christian tomorrow, it's not I mean, I won't be happier, I can assure you.
Yeah, what's going on. But is that a cause in itself, or is that an effect? To a large extent, as I see it, that's an effect of something lacking in society. So, like the Maoist insurgency. Basically, Maoist insurgency exploited the weaknesses seen in the governance. The government's inability to reach out to the marginalized, to the Dalits, to provide goods and services to the people in the far-flung areas, so they could organize. So even Christianity is, that's
I
because
think you're absolutely right. It's two symptoms of the same, let's say, underlying problem.
But then, fine, we understand the European Union doesn't diagnose, but maybe it has a long hand. That's the perception. So it goes on.
I'm actually quite flattered that you think we are that cunning to utilize South Korea for our action. So, I mean, if you see what we're doing in these 360 million, for example, how it's spent, only a minority, and from another budget line actually goes to non-state actors and NGOs. We, I think, are one of the few development partners here that directly work with the government. I already said, first of all, education, school sector reform program. Second priority is peace building under our former, we have been given a lot of money to, for example, the Nepal Peace Trust Fund and the Ministry of Peace and Reconstruction. This is where our money is going. Now the earthquake is going to go to the government. It's to the Nepal Reconstruction Authority to get started. So basically, we work mainly through government channels. And despite the fact that we don't always get value for money, I mean, let's also be clear about that. We need to be, and we need to look at the absorption capacity. Now, we feel that good NGOs can be an excellent partner with the government also to actually facilitate and deliver some services the government cannot do. For example, if we look at very far-flung districts, some NGOs have the capacity to really do excellent work, and that is why we are seeing them as an interesting and necessary partner in the whole development process.
Shall I have another chance?
Yes.
Thank you, Excellency. You have put the formal stand of European Union, but there are something hidden in quite diplomacy and quite strategy. Everybody knows South Korea and Japan are partner of whom and which in international politics. And even conversion is coming through South Korea, but it is giving the ground to create the pro-Western mindset in Nepal. It has a big diplomatic and strategic thing. Nepal is in between two largest country, and it is ground, let me say better word, cockpit, to manage 2.5 billion of the people of Asia. So European or Westerners are always interested or more interested in Nepal to have better stay here, and so that they can make or implement their strategy and policy in target to China and India. So our relation with our immediate neighbor is deteriorating, and our relation with West is cementing. It is very funny, and I don't know how to explain it. So we have a constituents with Western constituents, more Western constituents. It is promulgated or not, I am in confusion, but our Right Honorable President declared it is promulgated. Let me say promulgated. And the constitution which promulgated is if you won't take otherwise, it is totally dictated by the Western interest. There are so many clauses. You can see the translation in any web pages. You can see even INGO has got what we call constitutional position, and so many paradoxes. But it is, the gist is that it is completely dictated by the West. That's why our immediate neighbors are reacting in bitter way, some vocally, some hiddenly.
Now, anyone has anything?
Shall I put on opinion?
Please.
Thank you so much. I'm Lavesh Pekral. Currently, I work with this Media Plus organization, and I do organize this Prosperous Friday Missionary Series. Thank you, Excellency, for accepting our invitation. Excellency, as you have also mentioned that about the GSP facility and the EBA, arms and other more other facilities that have been given to the LDCs. Yes, there are so many facilities, especially this GSP, but EBA. But what is lacking with Nepal is that we do have a problem with the supply side constraints. So that is to be corrected first. Regarding EBA and GSP, there are so many barriers behind the facilities. So it is beyond capacity of Nepal, country like Nepal. We can sort out the example of certificate of origins related barriers. Nepalese garment industries are not capable of penetrating into the European market due to this certificate of origins barriers, which is more than 35 or 40% requirements. So this is one area where the European unions or the European, any nation can come up with assistance or any kind of consideration. This can be a greater help rather than this providing assistance of 180 million or 180 million. You know the impact of garment industries in Nepal. There were 500,000 jobs at a time, 500,000 jobs, and most of them are of women. So these are the areas where we can expect the real term help. Another case of disaster in Nepal related with the barriers or a negative market approach is who can forget the garment industry's collapse in Nepal? That is all due to the one negative report in one negative television report hampered this our carpet industry, which was again one of the best industries and export industries of Nepal. Secondly, ma'am, there are so many barriers related with the health issues and sanitation issues, sanitation and phytosanitary measures. So since these measures are very extreme measures out there in Europe, so coffee, tea, other niche agro products of Nepal, they are not capable of entering into it. So we need some more technical assistance and trade facilitations assistance related with this. Regarding trade investments, when normally the country, both European Union's country and the Nepal's government level, there will be we talk about the larger investment, but actually we need a smaller investments. There are so many schemes in the EU for companies, European companies like European enterprises, where the 200,000 euro incentive will given to those companies, which goes to the LDCs. But in such projects, there are no many companies, so there are no company at all in Nepal. So there are lacking, and I think as an excellency, you are also looking after this trade matters. So I would like to know about what are the ways that we can create an opportunity for the vulnerable people.
It's really where we should focus on. We've tried to do our bit with smaller projects for the moment, but you're right also that there are systemic barriers in the EU that maybe are not very favorable to Nepali products. You said the phytosanitary measures. These are indeed quite stringent in Europe for, of course, European consumer protection. And so indeed what is needed there is to help Nepali enterprises to actually accommodate their standards to the European level. And that can only be done by technical assistance. I totally agree that we should, for the rules of origin, I think there is also a change, I think, in policy, especially related to the countries that are eligible under everything but arms. That is why it's called everything but arms. But I would have to look closer into that, whether the rules of origin actually negatively impact Nepal. But yes, I think in the trade, on the trade agenda, there's a lot that remains to be done. I think, unluckily also in our delegation, we're a very small team. We don't have a specific trade counselor as many bigger delegations have. But it's something we need to give more priority, because this is ultimately what is going to help Nepal in the best way. We've started with the WTO project. Now we have this coffee project, as I already told you. There are a number of initiatives. Again, it's similar to the NGO program, but it's called Switch. And it's a worldwide program where we give money to certain let's say, industries to help them become more ecologically sound. For example, a number of enterprises in Kathmandu have benefited from it. One is the brick kilns. So there was a brick kiln that has received money to become cleaner and more fuel efficient. So there are these initiatives also ongoing, but I think we would need a big reform program, in fact, with the government, and to see where do the problems lie, how can we best tackle it, and help the industries that are most in need. And I think your example of the carpet industry is a very relevant one, and I'm extremely sorry that to hear, in fact, that it was one TV show that had such a negative impact on industry as such, because so thank you for bringing this up.
Sorry to disturb you once again. With the same issue that exporting to EU country. Well, when I export the product in big country like Spain, and then I get LDC facility also. But the same time, same product in a small country like Lithuania, where I export, there they didn't agree to provide me the facility. Then what I had to do is that, no, they were saying that no, we didn't have any such type of facility with the Lithuania. But when I brought the copy from the Nepal, the documents which I had exported in Spain, then only they gave. So then I don't know what exactly, how it had happened. I'm talking this year 2011. 2011, maybe because of that, I don't know, but that is there. Another thing is that why I just raised this issue is that regarding the carpet, yes, with a small news, it had damage. Similarly, with the small advertisement or the news, again, when Lady Diana put on the Pashmina, Nepalese Pashmina got such a huge market. These things are there now. The advertisement is there. And Trade Commissioner, that is very much important for us. And regarding this carpet issue, I would not like to blame 100% to European Union or any other countries. It's the lack of our government's approach also. Our government did not approach on time, and still also we were not trying to explain to the international community that we don't have child labor. This is also that. Please help us, and on your capacity also, if there is any ways that you can also put few words in European Union or the Brussels, I don't know, that would help the Nepalese market. Regarding the coffee also, well, organic, there are lots of product Like once I still remember when I was doing a presentation in Japan, there they had said that instead of saying that 100% organic also, if you would go for
Organic.
pesticide, that will also help to get the market, because as an LDC or all these facilities that we could get. Thank you.
Maybe next time there are problems. Maybe
India, because well, a new member state, maybe not aware of the EU rules. As you know, trade is one competency that is in the hands of the European Commission and not really in the hands of the member state. So they didn't know the rules. You were misinformed, and luckily you had a prior knowledge with Spain, so you could. But I mean, if next time a similar problem occurs, I mean, this is also our role here as the EU delegation of the European Union, to help you, and we can, for example, alert our trade services in Brussels that they can contact their member states and say, well, listen, this is not on, you're not actually abiding by EU law, this goes against EU regulation, because that's of course EU, this is relevant for each and every EU member state, that's what they signed on to. So I'm glad that in this occasion it could be sorted out, but don't hesitate also to call upon the EU delegation. Absolutely, we're there to help you.
Thank you.
Your Excellency, well, my concern is that although it so happens the European travel company, can't they have direct relationship with the travel agency of Nepal? Can you do something for this matter so that we do have very good relationship with the European? Because it so happens right now, if you see the other concern is that well, I forgot.
so European tourists will come by stay to Nepal without having to travel to India.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm not so much aware that this is really, that most of the tourists actually come through India. Maybe you're right, I haven't seen any numbers on this. What I see is that whenever I travel back to Europe for my own holidays, I usually very often take Turkish Airlines, and I see many European tourists coming directly via Istanbul, so they take a flight from wherever they are in Europe, go to Istanbul and then reach Nepal. So I think there's still a large number. The problem is, of course, that a lot of European companies have stopped direct flights to Nepal. That is a pity. I think 10 years ago there was still Austrian Airlines, there was probably British Airways at some point which had direct flights. Now I think the closest you can come to Europe is by taking Turkish Airlines, and so yeah, but I think it's quite a good connection, and I see it's full of tourists coming directly to Nepal. I also see that a lot of Nepalese travel agents actually have established great direct contacts in Europe. The few I've seen working, I mean, they also actively go to Europe to attend the big travel fairs, the one in Milan, for example, and they're doing a great job in having these direct connections. So, but I agree, maybe I don't know the numbers, as I told you. I think also Nepal is perhaps seen as a destination that can be easily combined with India, so they think, oh well, let's do a tour in India and then maybe a few days to Nepal, which if India is considered the main destination, it's all, I mean, Nepal nevertheless benefits from the fact that people want to come here for a few days. Very often my experience is if they come a few days, they come back and they come trekking, and they will make Nepal their destination in its own right. And I think if you compare to in South Asia, Nepal is not doing that badly, despite all the challenges. I myself went trekking last November, and I was quite surprised by the large number of European tourists who were doing the same treks. A lot of French people, a lot of Swiss people, despite the fact that there had been an earthquake and that some of the travel advice is not positive with people. I mean, especially second-time travelers. once they've come to know Nepal, they will be back. I mean, they know what to expect, and so that is also true. And I think one golden slogan that the Nepal Tourist Board had devised a few years ago was Nepal, once is not enough. And I think that is really, you can see, that is very true.
A small seat that lowest handed me a while ago says we have to wind up by 4. We're just going to get there. If a question, maybe we can take 1 or it should be the last one.
Hello, I'm Atul Upadhyay and I'm a researcher. I work with medicinal plants, exporting coffee to EU. And I would just like to add, this is not a query or any other thing, I'd just like to add, if we can also focus on the medicinal plants of Nepal, and comparatively it is, I think, better than the other Indian subcontinent countries, primarily because of less radiation and less pollution. And we used to send our products to the United States, but the products could not be delivered to the European Union countries. As you had mentioned about the astringents policies, and I had also opportunity to work with the European Pharmacopoeia and developing some protocols for Nepalese medicinal plants back in Belgium. So if we can do some collaborative research on how we can develop better medicinal plants with medicinal properties, I guess it would be beneficial not only to the Nepalese community but also to the European people who would have more herbal food and better health. That's it. Thank you.
Let me maybe tell you about one of our flagship programs which we did many years in Bhutan, which was a medicinal plant project. And it was first of all helping to set up a laboratory and also helping to grow medicinal plants, but then also helping with the collection at a unique biodiversity over 4,000 meters. And I think Nepal, there's no reason why, Nepal, that's a huge potential. So whatever you're doing there, I think that's extremely good, and let's keep in touch. If there's any way we can help you or put you in contact with European firms, we can have a look into it. I think this is again a niche market, but that has a lot of potential, and maybe also in terms of markets, not only to Europe, but I think even to China or India, of course, or to Southeast Asia. I guess there's so much demand for herbs and medicinal plants, maybe even more than Europe. But I think Europe also is opening up. People are more and more aware about the benefits of plants and medicinal plants especially.
I think with that, we, on behalf of Media Boss, I would like to thank Ambassador Teerink for accepting our invitation and being here. It was really an honor to have you here. And thank you for your explaining, showing us, the areas where EU and Nepal could work to not just bring in more aid, also to explore investment, trade opportunities. This EBA, everything but arms, would be looks like a good idea, but it's just not enough advocacy has been done. So probably that's an area you would look into, because if there are instruments like EBA, that will definitely help Nepalese entrepreneurs to look into the European market. Slowly, our need would be to replace aid by trade.
To thank you and have this discussion very stimulating. I've also learned a lot, also a number of good advices which I will take with me and hope to be put in practice, because what we all ultimately want is a prosperous and Nepal, and this is, I think, important to exchange ideas on how this can be achieved. So thank you very much for your valuable input.
Merci à vous de bientôt.